I can apply to radio. I can go one step further. I can apply to the power grid. Why not? I can apply to control. Higher cognitive control. Because if you like, can't do what I'm getting told. So, I said, if we are to really push engineering beyond where it is, we have to look at cognition. Well, I've already identified the perception action cycle as being one of the important principles of cognition. What else is there? There is indeed quite a bit more. So let me then, with all that introduction, by the way, I don't know how long it is I'm supposed to talk. When do you want me to stop? No, I haven't, I've only started. No. Okay.
You have 1 hour and a half.
Well, that's great. If I go beyond 1 hour and a half, it's okay. We'll stop. Okay? So, with that introduction, and it's really indeed intended to be motivation. And if, in the course of the 1.5 hours, if I could just somehow impress one of you in the room, hopefully more than one, and then you say, what the heck Haykin is talking about is something I want to do myself. And if you want to get into a dialogue with me by email, I would love to engage myself with. So, let me then go on and begin my lecture. And I've got to make sure I do my job right. There we are. And by the way, towards the end, I'll describe to you what I'm doing right now. Clearly, the lecture I'm giving you is a lecture I've presented before. In actual fact, the essence of the lecture is a lecture I presented in Japan just about 12 months ago. So I will leave it to the end. I don't have slides on it. But I'll describe to you where it is I'm going. So, that really is the title of the lecture. Well, here is the outline. What's this paradigm? Dracula is a very well-known cognitive neuroscientist. Where I am at my background, I dialogue with many of my colleagues in psychology, neuropsychology. They could not describe to me what cognition really is, whereby I can make use of it from an engineering perspective. Well, it was first of all. It's beautiful. When I got hold of it, I read it from cover to cover. It's not my habit to do it, but I did it. And in the course of it, I began to realize the principles that Joachim Pushkin described as the essence of cognition is precisely what you and I, as engineers, will do to build a cognitive dynamic system. Believe me. So what are they? I was going to say a few words on it. I've already spoken about the cognitive dynamic system. Right? So, I'll bypass it. Two kinds of cognitive dynamic systems. Well, then what is it I have in mind? I have in mind the distinction between cognitive radio and cognitive radar. What really is the difference between them? What is the basic difference? After all, they're both based on radio. Right? They both exploit radio. Where do they differ? Well, they differ in the following sense. When it comes to radar, right, basically, the receiver and the transmitter are side by side, not in every radar system, but in the large majority of radar systems you see today, literally, the receiver and the transmitter are co-located. What about radio? Well, the transmitter and the receiver are miles apart. So what really then is the difference between them? I say, cognitive radar has the fortune of mimicking the human brain. Now when I say mimicking, it means you try as hard as you could to be able to reproduce what the human brain does. Clearly, we'll never be able to do it 100%. But I can tell you, I'm moving closer and closer. On the other hand, in the case of radio, I have to have what? A wireless link. In the one case, all I need is a wire to go from the receiver to the transmitter. In the other, I have to have a wireless link. Well, there are two families of cognitive dynamic systems in the way I described them. Then what do I say? Well, here are the principles involved. The perception action cycle, I've already described it. Right? What's the next one? Memory. Now, of course, when you talk about the digital computer, memory is the one thing that comes to your mind. Right? There is memory in the digital computer. But what really is the basic difference between digital memory and the memory I'm talking about? Digital memory is static. It is static. On the other hand, human memory is dynamic. It learns all the time. If you look back to how you and I have grown from the time we were little babies, growing up, what is it that we did? And we didn't even realize it. As we grew up, our memory system became more and more powerful. How did we learn what we know how? Well, what are the methods of learning? Supervised learning. Well, that's where the teacher comes in. Right? The teacher will tell you how to learn, and then having built your system, you test it with elements that we have not somehow been introduced to. Well, that is very common, and that really is not the dominant form of learning that you and I are endowed with. Self-organized learning. We do a lot of the learning in a self-organized manner. Well, I don't want to go and drift towards neural connotation, but happy learning is the way we do it. And then the last one is by far the most powerful. Learning from experience. We interact with the environment, we act on it. And that really is what we refer to as reinforcement learning. And by far, the most powerful of those three, it is reinforcement learning. So in a sense, what I'm basically saying, the memory I'm talking about is dynamic. You learn from the environment, you store it, you adapt it, and so it goes on. So memory is extremely powerful. What else? The next one is attention. If there is one thing I have learned in the life, whatever it is, I've come to the conclusion we engineers do not pay enough attention to attention. I'll repeat that. Attention hardly featured in what we talk about when we teach signal systems, digital communication, adaptive filter theory. It goes on and on. And believe me, attention is extremely important. You and I do it without even realizing it. We take it for granted. I said, how do we bring attention into engineering? That's a question I asked a while ago. And it took me a while to really come to realize how it is done. Intelligence. Right? And then there's language. The fact of the matter is, perception actions like us as a physical presence in the brain. So just memory. I have, on the one side, perceptual memory, on the other I have executive memory. And in between them, I have what neuroscientists refer to working memory. I'll elaborate on that as we go on. Right? So memory has a physical presence. Certain actions like a light bulb. Attention does not. Attention is distributed algorithmically. Intelligence likewise. There is no part of the brain that you say this is where intelligence resides. No. Intelligence and attention are both based on what? A topic that we have not given it the attention it deserves. Feedback. Feedback is introduced in electronics. It used to play an important role in control. I love control even though I'm not a control specialist. You take feedback out of control, hardly does what it should. Feedback is extremely important. If you dig into it, you find feedback is all over the place in the human brain. Feedback is responsible for attention. And it's also responsible for intelligence. You take feedback away from my brain, I think I will lose my intelligence immediately. Language clarity is important. Right? But I'm going to put language aside, because that is where software engineering comes in. We can't do everything in one full school. So, I will come to language later on. So I'm going to put it aside. So, let me know. I'm going to come back to cognitive control for the language. So, let me then. Here are the 5 principles, one after the other. To me, after I studied Fuster's book, by the way, that book, the title of it is Cortex and Mind, Unifying Cognition, published in 2003. I introduced what I would call Fuster's paradigm, right? And in a sense, when he realized I'm doing what he has been doing, I think he was delighted. So I've coined the term Fuster's paradigm. You know, we talk about the Bayesian paradigm, right? Built on conditional probability, Bayes rule, and what have you. It's a paradigm. When it comes to inference, it plays a key role. When it comes to probabilistic reasoning, likewise. In fact, some people now think and say the human brain is built around Bayesian thinking. Well, I say Fuster's paradigm is even closer to what the human brain is all about. And there, I'm basically saying, in fact, I hope I have a diagram to illustrate what I'm trying to somehow describe. area. Here's my diagram for what a cognitive dynamic system is. I've really tried to be, right, true to what Fuster's paradigm is all about. If you look at the diagram on the right, I don't know where you can all see it from where you are. I can hardly read my own handwriting, right? So, on the right, we have what I would call perceptual memory. That is where, right, I perceive the world. On the other side, I have executive memory, right? On the right-hand side, that's where perception takes place. On the left-hand side, that is where is the right action on the environment takes its form. That's really where control is. Notice, right? We often say in control, estimation and control are the doing of each other. That's a well-known statement that often pronounced in control. When I say, here I have a beautiful example of duality. The perceptual memory on the left, right, and executive memory on the other. They are really the doings of each other. But you know what? It's that middle block, the working memory. In neuroscience, it's referred to as short-term memory. Which do you think is by far the most powerful? Well, in a sense, all three of them are extremely important in their own way. It is a conclusion I have reached, is the following. I had, if you like, a feedback loop. You can see it there, right? I have the environment in the bottom. I go and perceive what I can see through my perceptual memory. I feed it over to the other side. The other side then develops action on the environment, and now you can see that perception action cycle. Believe me, that perception action cycle is not performed in adaptive filtering, no matter what I can do to it or what he can do. The environment could touch it, but it's not inside the loop. That to me is a distinctive difference between adaptation and cognition. I say cognition is much more powerful, and it includes adaptation as a special case. So, adaptation is really part and parcel of cognition, but not the other way around. Anyone who talks about feedback, and there's plenty of feedback in that diagram. I have that global feedback loop that embodies the environment. But there are also local feedback loops in the memory system on the right and the memory system on the left. Right? Anyone working with feedback will immediately say feedback is a double-edged sword. Right? It can work for you, assuming stability, or it can work against you, and you have oscillation. Question. How is it the perception action cycle and all the feedback loops go on in your brain and mine, and yet that brain is stable? Where is it, and how is it it's done? Guess how? Working memory is the way to do it. It's only in the last 2 years, maybe 3, whenever I've introduced what I'm doing today, I said, memory is a stabilizer. Hard to believe, but it is. going on all the time. How do I make sure from one cycle to the next, my system is stable? Without stability, gosh, what the heck is the use of what I'm teaching? Right? It's the working memory that does it. Right? The way it does it, believe me, it's only in the last year I've tried to reason it out for myself. It's not in my lectures. Believe me, what it is probabilistic reasoning. That is where, if you like, the Bayesian principle comes in. Probability, as much as we don't like it in engineering, I think some of us love it, quite a few of us don't like it. But I say it's extremely important. Probability theory, I would say, well, not exactly as you teach it, but the essence of it is correct. Plays a key role in the human brain. And you actually have probability thinking. How? Well, basically, when I pass from memory on the right-hand side, right, to memory on the other side, there could be errors introduced. What are those errors? Well, the errors are, if you like, the result of estimation. Estimation theory, no matter how accurate we make it, there will always be estimation errors. Where will that arise? It will arise in the perceptual memory. But then, could there be errors on the executive side? I say for sure. How could that arise? Well, it could be the other side of the brain, right? The other side of our cognitive dynamic system does not perform action in the way it should. You and I make errors all the time. That is where, if you like, the left-hand side, the executive side, makes errors. So what does that working memory do? Well, in a sense, right, there are consequences for action taken. There will be errors produced. And in effect, that working memory tries to mediate between the left and the right. And in the course of that mediation, it begins to assume the role of a stabilizer. So indeed, memory is very powerful. It's extremely powerful. So in a way, I'm trying to introduce why indeed we should take note of memory. And however it's done through learning. The conceptual memory is long-term memory. Long-term. The executive memory, long-term again. The working memory is short-term. Short-term in the sense, as I go from one cycle to the next, it corrects error. And indeed, that really, if you like, is where stability is realized. So, let me then carry on a bit more. Well, here is, if you like, an illustrative diagram as to what goes on in the perception exercise. You see, all the important principles, unfortunately, from where you are, it's hard to read what the diagram tells you. How do I build a cognitive dynamic system? Well, I want to perform estimation on the right-hand side. Well, that estimation could be a Coleman filter. No reason why not. It could be an extended Coleman filter. It could be a cubical Coleman filter. It could be an uncentered Coleman filter. It could be a particle filter. Right? But whatever you do, always be error, right? There is no way your estimator will be 100% accurate to the point there will be no error. So what will those errors do for you? Well, those errors, if you like, provide you with the tool for feedback information. In other words, what I'm saying, the executive side is not really interested in terms of what the perceptual memory is like. But rather, it is the errors which are made on the perceptual side that represent the basis for feedback information. Now, what is the benefit of this perception action cycle? Well, this is where feedback comes in. On the first cycle, the errors could be relatively noticeable. What do you think will happen next? The errors will become smaller. Right? So, if you were to then ask the question, by virtue of what I've just described, and basically, what I've just described there is the perception action cycle that could be carried on in cognitive radar. Right? Now, compare the rate of convergence of my cognitive radar based on that perception action cycle with respect to how I would do it if I had no cognition in the system. Which do you think of the two will converge faster? The perception action cycle. Initially, it will go down in some exponential form, but then as it accelerates from perception action cycle to the next, right, the errors go down more and more. I don't think I have a diagram where I can illustrate what I've just described. I can say it as follows. When my first, or one of my PhD students, who was the first to describe what a cognitive radar is, when he defended his PhD thesis, one of the members of the examining committee said, I do not believe how indeed the convergence rate could be so fast. Well, indeed it is fast. And it is fast because of this perception action cycle. One thing I learned from a discussion I had with that workshop we had last week, it's interesting what you can learn from them in the course of this time. Basically, he said that what I have is an exponential rate of convergence. And he said, if the system is linear and the rate of convergence follows an exponential law, then the system must be robust. Well, I'm going to dig into that because that's a very important statement. Robustness to me is the essence of engineering. And indeed, what I've just described, the convergence is very fast, and if indeed I'm using the Coleman filter, it's linear, patient or robust. So basically I'm saying, I could literally build my cognitive radar out. On the right, I will bring in a Coleman filter. It doesn't have to be linear. The Coleman filter sees the world, right? I can put aside that memory. So I'm describing to you how we first built our cognitive radar. For the receiver, I have a Coleman filter. It could be the extended Coleman filter if you want to make it more powerful. Or it could be one or the other. Right? Then what do I have on the other side? Well, on the other side, I could do one of two things. I could go and appeal to balanced dynamic programming. Now, how many of you will have been introduced development is dynamic program. Doesn't it? Right? Well, in a sense, when we talk about optimal control, that really is where dynamic programming comes in. Right? Or I could use reinforcement learning. All you have to do is to look at the book by Casi and Haykin. Not really that complicated, believe me. It's almost like the LMS algorithm. Right? So, I'm saying how indeed you could literally build your cognitive radar, and I bet you could do it in a matter of 20 years. On the right-hand side, I have a nonlinear estimate. On the left-hand side, I have a reinforcement learning algorithm. It could be Q-learning or whatever. And believe me, if you dig into it, it's nothing but a variation of the LMS. We find LMS to be rather popular, and here's another example. Right? Now, and I'm describing to you how indeed we built a cognitive radar for the first time. What do I do with that regime? Well, I look to adaptive filtering again. The Wiener filter. Believe me, this is how we did it. I have a Wiener filter going from left to right, and another Wiener filter going from right to left. I go from left to right when the left makes an error, which I try to correct on the other side, and vice versa. There's my so-called engineering interpretation of working memory. And believe me, it worked. So, if I could repeat it again, for the perceptual memory, I would use Coleman filter. Linear, non-linear Coleman filter, or any of the other. On the other side, I will use reinforcement learning, exemplified by Q learning or some other. For the working memory, and that's what I think is right. Two Wiener filters going in opposite directions. And believe me, the Wiener filter was beautiful. And by golly, it made a huge difference. Literally. So, that diagram, no diagram, when you really study it, it really teaches you what the perception exercise is all about. So, what else is there that I should carry on with? Well, let me go on. Here is an illustrative example. You have an aircraft that is forming a corner. A corner is round, hard. Right? And the question is, how do I track the motion of that target? Right? So, that, if you like, is what the problem was. Now, earlier on, I mentioned attention. Basically, what we do is the executive side, right? Or more precisely, reinforcement learning basically says, I have a number of possible actions. The question then is, how do I pick the optimal action to perform on the next cycle? That diagram does it beautifully. It says 4x4. If you look at that circle I have right in the middle, that would represent the action that was taken on the previous cycle. Right? What do I have around me? Well, I say I want to make the transition from one loop to the other, because that's how the brain does it. The brain doesn't jump from one thing to another, right? It's goes gradually in a new fashion. So supposing on the previous cycle, it was that very dark schedule in the middle. How do I now pick the next action? Well, in a sense, what I do is look at all the possible actions that the ground that I did before. Right? So have what? 1, 2, 3. I have about 6 or 8. And what then do I do? I use the Corinthians, should I just, which of those would be the closest to our own people? Once I've done that, I can pick it, then I move on. And you know, what is really nice about what I've just described is what you see there. If indeed I go along with what I've just described, you see how smooth it is in the bottom, right at the corner. On the other hand, right, if I were to move away from paying attention to a section, you can see the one in the left-hand corner just literally something from one possibility to another. Now, clearly, from a practical point of view, it's the one that is new. Because the other one, if, for example, I have something like a magnetron or a firestone or a traffic wave field, before too long, the light of that amplifier will somehow die out. On the other hand, if the movement is smooth, the light will go on. So I say, well, there's really a beautiful example. So now I can pay attention. All we have to do is record what the action was that was taken before. Now, what basically I have is the light down this way forward. Every one of those little circles represented this way forward. And I pick the one that is closest in a linear sense to our people. So I'm saying that indeed the section. So, in a sense, how indeed I can literally build my cognitive breakout. An estimation algorithm on the right, reinforcement learning on the other side, coupled when I build a connection, when it comes to attention, this is what I do. And what really is beautiful about what I've described in the context of Buddhist paradigm, memory builds on creativity. Attention builds on memory and creativity. Intelligence builds on attention, memory, and creativity. It's almost like what I said, divide and conquer. That's how we build a learnable system. Divide and conquer. And that's what we do in applying Buddhist paradigm. Now, from our last talk, cognitive control. I have to say, I have always been interested in control. I did not do my PhD in it, but I tell you, it's beautiful. You know, sometimes you say a subject is beautiful, and that's what that is what cognitive, or that is what control is. And I say when you make it cognitive, it is the best of the best. So, how do we do it? Recently, it took me a while to discover how I can build a cognitive control. How do we do it? So in a sense, my first reaction was, bring in Bellman's dynamic programming. But Bellman's dynamic programming assumes the Markovian assumption. In other words, right? When I perceive the world, I should actually see the state of the world. That really is the Markovian assumption. Right? I have access to the world for its state where I'm forming my optimal control. But the real difficulty is autonomy. The perceptual memory sees the world directly. What about the executive memory? The executive memory sees the world through what? The eyes of the perceptual memory. or that violates the Markovian assumption. The Markovian assumption says, when I perform control, I must have direct access to the state of the environment. For sure, the perceptual system is the world directed, but the transmitter does not. And that is where I introduce the notion of the entropic state. Now, what do I mean by entropic state? I say, for cognitive control, there has to be two states. One state is the state of the world, for which we have the state law. Right? And memory takes care of that quite well. When I go to the executive side, I look to the entropic state of what? The receiver. The receiver clearly makes errors. It's got to make errors in estimating the state of the world. So I look at the estimation errors. I look to entropy, random entropy, if indeed it's not linear, squared error, if it is linear, right? And I'm saying that really gives me the state of the receiver. In other words, the entropic state, if you like to call it to define it, would in a sense describe to you how accurate the perceptual memory is. And lo and behold, when we don't know, when we sit down, cognitive control was beautiful. And you know what? I dug into the literature. I did not see what I'm describing here. It didn't seem to address the theorized principle as to how cognitive control is functioning. Well, the very talk I presented is the talk I presented in the practice of unconsciousness. Prior to that, I presented a simplified version of that lecture, or a simplified version of this lecture, which I presented as a short issue. A lot of them are very encouraging. And basically I said, to the best of my knowledge, I do not know of the existence of entropic state in the brain. I didn't be published in the literature. Well, there was silence, and it was agreed, yes. There is indeed validity for entropic state. The only thing is, the way I introduced it, I said the entropic state is chemical. In reality, it's more like a nature. I'll say more about that later. But the important thing is, by introducing the entropic state, well, I was hoping there would be a diagram there, but I don't see it. So I'm going to go back. Oh. I didn't have to go back. Wait a minute. There we go. Basically, I don't have the graph that illustrates how indeed by doing what I described, I can literally outperform what I would do if indeed I was to go along with the optimal control, which is what dynamic programming is for. So in a sense, what is it I'm really going to say? To perform cognitive control, I bring in entropic state, right? And given the entropic state, I can now involve things of reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning assumes that I have direct access to the state. Well, in this case, that access is provided by the state of the receiver. So you have two states. One state of the world, the other one being the state of the receiver in entropic terms. So, in a sense, by doing what I just described, right, we do have cognitive control. Now, on that memory space. I do actually have the cognitive control that I described at the workshop last year. I don't know whether I should somehow bother you to go back and show you that, right? But I can tell you, it makes a huge big difference by introducing this notion that I referred to as the topic state and the convergence period in a way that improves with it. So, let me try to summarize what it is I've been speaking about for the last hour or so. I'll describe it this way. First of all, cognitive radar is now a reality. No longer me giving a talk and being nervous because there will be some radar specialists and they would somehow misbelieve what I said. Well, no really. It is now well accepted that cognitive radar is indeed a way of building a new generation of radar systems. Cognition plays a key role in wireless communication. Cognition plays a key role in control. Well, in a sense, those are three areas that I can say we've really perfected as well as we can in my life. I don't have a large number of students. I have about 3 or 4 and a couple of postdocs. It's amazing by somehow motivated to be involved in what I have described to start to so many. So what is it I'm going to do now? I've described cognitive dynamics systems in a way that I hope I've made you believers in it. But cognitive dynamic system, as I've described it, is for a single session, like cognitive radar. You're focusing attention on one particular topic. But where is it? Cognition becomes really powerful. I say when we bring in the concept of the network into play. And that is precisely what I'm doing right now. Cognitive dynamic network includes cognitive dynamic systems and its technical examples. For cognitive dynamic systems, I want to use one sentence. For cognitive dynamic networks, I have multiple sensors. Well, this is not the time for me to show you what I have done. So within 6 months or so, I will be able to show it to you, or you will see it in a paper that I'm going to write for the professor called Cognitive Dynamic Network. And there, you see what I refer to as a cognate. The term cognate was introduced by Gustav. Basically, it is, if you like, at the structural cognate, an executive cognate, with waking memory coupling them together. I call it a cognitive triplet, or just a triplet. Now just imagine, you have a very large number of sensors, right? The sensors are statistically dependent, and you have a layered structure. I didn't really say enough about the layered structure. There are 7 layers in your brain and mind. Why does memory have to be layered? Well, for the following reason. You know, you ask me, how did you come to have a very good? Don't ask me how, but we have it. The reason why you have a multi-layered structure of both the executive memory and the perceptual memory is the training of time for space. Now what exactly do I mean? Basically I mean, I can literally build the most powerful memory with just one layer of It's not there. Right? But, clearly that takes a lot of time. On the other hand, if I was to substitute, right, space for time, I can literally outperform the one layer in a way that clearly will justify why I should go into a layered structure. So the motivation for a layered memory is this trade-off. It is clearly we often talk about a trade-off. Like the mean variance dilemma. We have that in statistical superposition. If I reduce the mean, the variance goes up. If I reduce the variance, the mean goes up. So, the solution is try to have that trade-off between the two of them. And indeed, it's nothing but a trade-off again. So the system I'm building, believe me, right, I haven't built it yet, okay? Basically, it will have 7 layers. I want to go along with how many layers I have. These complements, I'm going to make them linear. But then I'll have a dictionary on the one side and decision making on the other that separate one complement from another. And I will have something like, as I said, 7 layers, and something in the order of about 500 to 1,000 complements. Far more elaborate than what I have described in my lecture today. By so doing, I come even closer to the human brain, so that I'll either be the equal of it, but it's almost like one step after another. The next generation of cognitive dynamic network will be more powerful than what we have done up until now. Well,